Yo, yo, what's up, everybody? It's Mr. E here for another therapy session. I've got my coffee in my Mr. E mug. I don't know if you can see it or not because of the glare, but anyway, I'm ready to roll. And so, what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about a fundamental topic, what I call a foundational topic. It's sort of like this right here when if you ever watch anyone build a house, if you watch a construction crew build a house, of course, they always start with the foundation. If you don't have a foundation, then you really can't build a house because it'll fall apart. So you have to start out with the foundation and then you build up from there. So therapy is very, and education in general is very much the same way. And of course, this isn't actual therapy on this channel, it's educational. So we have to start out with sort of a general foundational topic and then move to specific. Having said that, I told you guys in the introductory video, I'm not sure what the actual format of these videos will be. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. Of course, I'm a little bit ignorant when it comes to YouTube. I've never done this before, never had a channel, so kind of what I wanted to do was I had thrown some ideas out there about like a quote of the day, things of that nature that we could add to the videos let's be honest, this material may be helpful, but it will probably be sort of boring. I mean, it's education. So it's not like I'm going to be one of these YouTubers filling up my bathtub with jelly beans or something, those guys make millions of dollars. This probably will make nothing. But anyway, so what I figured, I didn't get any comments or any feedback about the format of the video. So I just kind of decided to start out with a quote of the day. And so we'll go ahead. I'll share my screen and we will get to that then. So let me start this PowerPoint here. So the quote that I decided to pick, I want it to always be something that's appropriate to the topic. And so today we're talking about thinking, feelings, and behavior. So the quote is, it's not what you say to everyone else that determines your life. It's what you whisper to yourself that has the greatest power. Now, I don't know who this individual is down here, but today what we're going to talk about, and this is something that I really harp on a lot in my therapy when I'm working with clients. I focus a lot on thinking and what we call irrational thinking, faulty thinking, whatever you want to call it. This quote is absolutely true as far as I'm concerned. I'll just give you my opinion on it. What you say to yourself, your self-talk, whether it's in your head where no one else can hear it or whether it's out loud, it doesn't matter. We all talk to ourselves. We all have self-talk. It's that thinking that goes through our head that really determines our feelings and then what we do, what we call our actions or our behavior. So if any of you actually are watching this and want to comment on what how you feel about that quote, please feel free to do so. I'd love to hear your comments, whether it's through email or whether it's comments on the video or even on the Facebook page, now that I have a Facebook page as well. Another thing I wanted to mention too about the PowerPoints that I'm going to do, every single educational video I do or sessions that I do, they will have a PowerPoint it took me about 3 days to put this together. And what I want to do with these PowerPoints is provide it as a free educational resource for people. Again, I'm sort of ignorant when it comes to YouTube. So I'm assuming that you can put a link or upload a document in the description of the video. I'm not really sure how it works. I will certainly try, but if I'm not able to do that, I will put, I will upload it if I possibly can onto the Facebook page and just tell everybody, hey, use this if you need it. If you're a therapist or a social worker, you have a client that needs some help, any of my videos or the PowerPoints, you're free to use them. Use them however you want to. None of this stuff, at least as far as anything I came up with, it's not trademarked or anything. Again, I'm doing this to try to help people, and I figure, if you've got somebody that needs help, send them this information. You can use it anytime you want to. I don't necessarily expect many people to do that, but certainly you can. Before we get started, I have a couple of points of order, I guess you could say, I wanted to address. I had two people who contacted me and were telling me about some issues that they would eventually like addressed, or they were asking for advice related to this channel. One individual that I have is a dear friend of mine that I used to work with at one of the group homes where I used to work with young men who had delinquent behavior. They had some issues. And she told me that, she wanted a session, a video, eventually addressing what's called schizoid personality disorder, which is basically in the same family as schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. All of these things fall under psychosis. So to her, if you're watching this, of course, I won't mention her name, but I'm just going to say this is something we will address on this channel eventually. I mean, if it's something people even care about, if this even, I mean, I'll at least put some foundational information on here anyway. But what I would like to do is get to a point where, I get to specific topics like that, specific diagnoses, things like that, where I can do an entire video on that. But that is something that's a little bit more specific. So it will happen. It'll just be sort of in the future. Second point of order, I had another individual that's very dear to me, a friend of mine, who she worked at another group home that I used to work at. And she just kind of threw a hypothetical at me, and I'll just mention the scenario really quickly, and then we'll get into this PowerPoint. She had said that I guess there's a family member, a brother living with her father. And she said that he has a tendency to become violent. He won't move out of the house. I don't know if he has a job or not. I can't remember, but basically just sort of freeloading, dad lets him do it. This is a grown man. He's 35 years old, my age. And so my advice to her, okay, and I'll say this to anybody, obviously anybody's watching this video, the advice is the same. One thing that will come up often on this channel is the concept of boundary setting, interpersonal boundaries. And so my advice to her would be sit down, talk to your father, and tell him, look, you really need to set a hard boundary with the brother, whatever that may be. And of course, a boundary includes the boundary statement itself, which is here's what I want you to do, or here's what I don't want you to do. And then there has to be a consequence that you're going to enforce consistently. So it may be you have 1 month to get a job and move out. At the end of that month, you're just going to have to go, And of course, if somebody becomes violent, you may have to call the police. You may have to do what you have to do. But the bottom line is you have to set interpersonal boundaries with people, even family. And it's not about being mean. It's certainly not about, that's not what boundaries is about. But to be honest, it seems mean to the person that you're setting boundaries with. But anyway, that's more of a specific topic as well, specifically when it comes to interpersonal communication. And we will get to that. Anyway, one more note about the PowerPoint. My PowerPoint, normally when I do PowerPoint presentations, a rule of thumb is to just put bullet points, and then you expound on it. So, you don't want to put every single thing that you're going to say on the slide, because then the person that's watching your presentation could just read the slide. There's no point in the person giving the presentation. Having said that, that's normally how I do things. On these slides, though, because I'm presenting them as an educational resource for people to use, if I just did just bullet points, the people you give this to, or even you, if you're the educator, you're not going to know exactly what to say. The client or the individual you give this information to certainly will not know what it is if there's no context. So on some of these slides, there's bullet points that I expound on, but I put more information than I typically would if I was doing a presentation, say at work or something of that nature. So having said that, let's get started then. So this is a little diagram of like a pyramid, I guess, that I made. Of course, it doesn't look all that great, but the point is what we're looking at here is we're looking at the foundational information at the bottom of the pyramid that moves up. And eventually we get up here to the top of the pyramid, which is basically what we're trying to do with therapy, okay, in the mental health field is we're trying to help clients set goals and reach those goals through their behavior, okay, through their actions. And so achievement of goals is really what we're trying to do. Again, we're not trying to fix people, okay? Therapy does not fix people. If people need to be fixed, they have to do it themselves. Period. But I don't see people as needing to be fixed. They're just people, okay? Having said that, these things at the bottom are our foundational topics, but the ones in red are foundational, but we're not talking about those today. What we're going to talk about is the one in blue over here, which is that you can only control what you think, feel, and do, which in this case, I will use three terms interchangeably. What you do, action, and behavior. So they're all the same thing. So if I do something, that's an action, but it's also my behavior. So for instance, if I go to Taco Bell and eat a taco from Taco Bell, that's something I did. It's an action I took. I ate the taco and it's a behavior. Now, these other foundational topics I don't know, I'm not sure if each one will have its own video. I know freedom and responsibility will, because that is a big topic that is critically important. This one right here, freedom and responsibility, relates to literally anything and everything on this channel, anything mental health, anything substance abuse, anger management, you name it. This is probably the foundational topic. I figure a video for this one, a video for these two things in the middle, And then, of course, we're doing a video on this one today. And then as we go along, this is just an example of the different topics that we will have as we move up the pyramid. And then, of course, I hope there will be specific videos on anxiety, depression, stress, past trauma, child development, cognitive development of children, social development, all kinds of things. But these are just the main topics that we're going to do as we go along on this channel, and then we'll just see how it goes. So the first thing is, again, I didn't just do bullet points because I don't want people to not have context. So the first thing is a person can only control what they think, feel, and do, which again, we're going to call behavior or action. This is a critical point. You cannot control the universe or the environment, whatever words you want to use for that. In other words, everything outside of your body, you can only manipulate or affect the environment. You can't really control it. Now, there may be things in your environment that it seems like you can control. Like if I take my Mr. E coffee mug and I throw it at a window, I controlled that. But really, that's my behavior. That's something I did. Okay. I can't really control, even though I broke the cup and maybe that was my goal, I can't control how it breaks. Or maybe for some reason it doesn't break. Maybe it only chips, or I don't know, whatever. But I can't control exactly what happens. Okay, that's one thing to understand. You can only control yourself. Having said that, everything in your environment, the universe, that includes literally everything in it and other people. And so it makes up, I don't know what the percentage is. We'll just say 99 point, the nines can go forever. Whereas what you control is again, the zeros can go forever. 1% of that's all you can control is what you are. Okay, so literally what you think in your head, your self-talk, the feelings that come from it, and then what you do. Now, having said that, like I said, you can manipulate or do things in your environment. Like for instance, I could decide to rearrange everything in my office here. But it would be my behavior doing that. Without my behavior, the furniture doesn't get rearranged. Or if I throw my coffee cup, without me taking that action, the coffee cup never moves from where it's at. Okay. So what you think, feel, or do, even though it's a very small percentage of the universe, an incredibly small percentage, it actually holds more weight than the rest of the universe. Now, what I mean by that is, I want you to think about science for a minute. Think about planets. So, you have, let's say you had two planets and they were the same size. But let's say one of those planets had a lot of mass, a much more mass than say the Earth does. So the planet with more mass, okay, is going to have much higher gravity than the Earth, even though they may be the same size. One has more mass compacted into it than the Earth does. That's sort of how I want you to think about your thinking, feelings, and behavior. Even though it's a very small percentage of the universe, it actually has much more gravity. It carries much more weight. Well, let me give you an example. Okay. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say I wake up and I'm sleepy. I'm really tired. Okay. And let's say I decide to make some coffee and I decide to drink that coffee. Okay. Well, when I woke up, I was tired. There wasn't really much I could do about that. But when I got up and took the action of making some coffee and drinking that coffee, okay, well, then I started waking up. Maybe I got up and jogged around the neighborhood. My behavior has more bearing on my tiredness than the universe does. Or, if something breaks in my house, let's say my water heater breaks. I can't control that. It happened. It was a random thing. My water heater just goes out, right? Which, by the way, I had that happen last August. Just so you guys know, it cost about $1,100. But anyway, it went out, and I didn't know it was going to happen. I couldn't control that. Okay, that was the universe. That was the 99.99%. But what I did was I looked at it. I said, okay, I called up a plumber. I said, hey, I'm going to need a new, water heater. What are the prices? They told me. I scheduled for the next day. I cut my water off. I went in there and I started, I took my shop vac and I started getting that water up. So my actions carried more weight. Whereas if I had just sat there and let's say I got, pissed off about it, nothing would have happened. There would have just been water on the floor, water still running everywhere, no water heater. So in other words, the universe, things happened to me. It wasn't about me, but it just happened to me. But it was my actions that determined the outcome. So the next day they came, they switched it out. I cleaned everything up, and then I had a brand new water heater. There you go. And it was my actions that did that, which of course come from my thinking. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, you can only manage your feelings by managing your thinking. So when I do therapy, so for instance, let's say I get someone who's coming in for anger management. Anger management is not anger management. It's misnamed. It's behavior management. And I would say, if you back up from there, it's thinking management, which really everything in the mental health field is. You can't really manage anger. What you're managing is your thinking and your behavior. So if I'm angry about something, what I'm managing is my thought process and then maybe not punching a wall. Okay. So in other words, punching a wall is an action, not a feeling. So I can be angry, but I don't have to punch a wall. On the flip side, I can be really happy. Like I could wake up like, man, I'm super happy today, and I could reach over and punch a wall. So the feeling has nothing to do with the action. It may influence it, but the feeling itself doesn't do anything. Anger doesn't float around the room attacking things. That's not what happens. That would be a behavior that you consciously decide to be involved in. Um, Now, the last point here, cognitive behavioral therapy is the modality that I typically use. I modify it a bit along with something called rational emotive therapy. And so what I do is I take these modalities and I sort of modify them. And you're going to see that today as we look at something that I modified myself based on something that already existed in the field. But CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is probably one of the most common modalities that you see in therapy. And it's pretty much just, how does your thinking relate to your emotions or your feelings and your behavior or actions? Now, this right here is called the cognitive triangle. I work with kids, so a lot of times they can't remember the word cognitive, which just means thinking. It comes from the Latin root word that just means to think. But anyway, I just call it the triangle thing with my kids because sometimes they can't remember. So I just say, hey, do you remember we talked about that triangle thing last time? And they'll say, oh, yeah, the triangle thing. So this is the cognitive triangle is like a sort of a foundational concept within CBT, within cognitive behavioral therapy. So pretty much you think something, you feel something, and then you're going to do something. You're going to have some type of behavior. So what I did was I called this Mr. E's modified cognitive triangle. So it's a little bit more complicated, but there's a reason for it. It's because I want to explain it better. So the original cognitive triangle does not explain much, okay? And it leaves something out. It leaves out what happens. So if you look here, these three circles, thinking, feelings, and behavior, is the same as the last slide. What I added to it was something called an event. Now, this is something I don't know if I'm the only person that's ever come up with this, but as far as how I teach it, I came up with this on my own. This didn't come out of a book. It's something I just sort of, I guess I took the base idea and built off of it. But the event, whatever it is that's happening, we can call this a type of event. Might be a trigger, if you want to call it a trigger, like somebody yelled at me and that was my anger trigger. So the yelling would be the event that occurred. You may call it a problem if it's something that already happened or it's something that's occurring, at this time. So for instance, like if if my water heater goes out, let's say it went out yesterday. Okay, well, that's in the past, but it's still, my water heater's broke. It's a problem. And then of course, if I want to get that water heater fixed, then that's a goal. So that's a future event that you want to happen. Or maybe there's a goal in the reverse. Maybe there's something you don't want to happen. So for instance, maybe you're on probation and you don't want to go back to jail. So your goal would be to stay out of jail. In either case, an event is the overall term, but within that, it can be a trigger, a problem, a goal, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is events occur over time. So from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, every second of the day, there's events occurring in the universe from other people and just from everything out there. Okay. So like, for instance, today I woke up and it was raining. Okay. Well, that's part of the universe. It's weather. I can't control the weather. The weather has nothing to do with me. I woke up and it was raining. Okay. So that's an event. I woke up, it was raining. I walked outside, I got wet. It is what it is. So that's 99 point, again, the nines can go forever. That's the percentage of everything. It's events. Two things about events that are pretty much almost always true. First of all, they're random, which means they are events. Anything that happens is dictated by a probability or a chance that it will happen. So for instance, it's raining today. There was a probability that it would rain today. That's why meteorology exists. There's a probability. There's a certain dew point. There's a certain humidity level, temperature, the wind, the direction and speed of it, warm fronts, cold fronts, whatever. All of these variables come together. If you were to do the math, if you had the equations, if you had the computer models, you would have a certain percentage chance, a probability that it would rain. Okay, but it's random. You don't know. I mean, the computer model may show that it will rain, and then all of a sudden it doesn't rain, and the sun comes out. And this is why we joke that meteorologists are the only people that can be wrong about things, but keep a job, right? And so the thing is, it's random. You can't know. All you can have is a probability that it will rain or snow or whatever. Okay. Another key point about events, whether they're triggers, problems, or goals, is that they are not personal. They are not about you. I cannot emphasize this enough. Events are not about you. They're not about me. This is a very important statement. Events happen to you, but they are not about you. So if it's raining and I get wet, okay, that happened to me. It's raining and I got wet. The rain fell on me, but it's not raining because of me. If Mr. E had never been born, if Mr. E had died in 1998, it would still be raining on the same day at the same time in exactly the same place as if whether I'm alive or not, whether I'm here or not. If I had decided last week to go to Florida, if I decided to go to California, if I decided to go to Japan last week, it would have still rained in the same spot, in the same place, and everybody around me would also be getting rained on. So it's not about me, okay? Now, once an event occurs, the event is separate from the triangle, okay? So the event is the universe. The cognitive triangle, thinking, feelings, and behavior, this is the 0.000 forever 1% of everything of you, okay? So this is you, okay? And maybe I should have put, I don't know if I should put the word everything, but the point I'm making is this is what you control, okay? This is the universe, and this is what you control. So once you come down, then we actually get to the triangle. So when something happens, we start to think. And that thinking is going to take primarily two different forms. It's either going to be rational and based on a fact, something you can prove, or it's going to be irrational and based on an opinion, which is, of course, something you can't prove. Now, one important point, you'll notice there's a plus and a negative under each one of these words, meaning positive and negative thinking. Now, in my therapy, my clients, if you're a former client and you're watching this, you know I do not like to talk about positive and negative thinking. Most therapists always talk about, well, you need to think positively. Stop thinking negatively. Well, there's a problem with that. And when we discuss, there will be an entire video on just the thinking circle. We're going to do an entire video on just rational and irrational thinking. At that point, I will explain why that's why I don't focus on positive and negative thinking. I focus on rational and irrational. The reason is because primarily positive and negative thinking, they're both essentially the same thing as far as they don't necessarily help you reach a goal. They don't necessarily help you fix a problem. They may just be an opinion. So for instance, if I say everyone hates me, well, that's a negative, irrational statement. It's my opinion, and I'm saying everyone hates me. It's negative. But if I change one word and I say, well, everyone loves me, okay, well, it's still an opinion. It's my opinion that everyone loves me. I can't prove that. It may make me feel good, but my behavior based on that probably won't be very good because people think, man, he's haughty. Wow, he's stuck up. He thinks everybody likes him. Whereas if I think everybody hates me, then I seem depressed. So, but it doesn't really matter whether it's positive or negative. The bottom line is it's an opinion either way, whether it's a good opinion or a bad opinion. It doesn't really matter. You can't prove it either way, and it doesn't help you do anything, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, your thinking, and this is where it differs from the typical cognitive triangle. This is something I came up with on my own. The thinking creates how you feel or your emotions. So sometimes clients try to argue with me about this because sometimes our thinking is automatic. We may not be aware. It may be more of a like an instinct or something that maybe it's an impulse, maybe it's flashes of something in our head. But the bottom line is, in order for me to feel something, I have to think about it first. So like if somebody comes up to me and says, well, Mr. Eric, you're ugly and bald. Okay, which a lot of my group home kids would do just to try to make me mad. Okay, when they say, well, Mr. Eric, you're ugly and you're mad, or you're ugly and you're bald, there's no way for me to get angry about that unless I think about it. So if I start thinking, I can't believe they disrespect me like that. Nobody's going to talk to me like that. I don't think so. Okay, well, when I tell myself that, I start to get angry. But now if I just say to myself, okay, I don't care, whatever, I've just got a job to do, man. Let me warm my coffee up and, hey, little Jimmy, I need to see you for therapy. And I just completely ignore what they said. Well, then I'm not going to have that feeling. I'm not going to be angry. So in order for me to be angry about something or worried about something that may or may not happen, or for me to be depressed about something I did in the past, maybe I messed up, maybe I was on opiates and got sent to jail and got my kids taken away, and then I'm depressed about it because I'm thinking about, well, I have to think about it in order to be depressed about it, you know? Now, one thing that happens then is that your feelings drive or influence behavior, but they do not cause it to happen. This is incredibly important. Just because I'm angry, that does not make me punch a wall, yell, scream, cuss, stab somebody. I mean, if I'm depressed, that does not make me cut myself, kill myself, jump off a bridge, lay in the bed all day. All it does is influence the behavior. It does not make it happen. So it may be a very strong influence on it, but it doesn't make it happen. Again, I can be angry and just sit here and be angry and take no action. Then again, I can be perfectly happy, reach around, throw a lamp and break it. I mean, I can turn around and punch a wall, but be perfectly happy. I'm not upset or angry about anything. So the question is, well, where does behavior come from? Where does action come from? So if you notice, the direction of the arrows are on purpose. So the event happens, you start to think. Usually, 99% of the time, our default setting as human beings is to think irrationally. When we do the video on irrational thinking, I will repeat this, but the reason for this is because as human beings, we have two parts to our brain. We have the frontal lobe in the front, and then sort of in the middle section, if you could have a cross section of my brain, what you would have is the animal brain, or what they call the lizard brain, reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it. But in the animal brain, you have instincts, and one of the primary instincts is to survive. This is the reason why when kids are born, babies are born, and when kids are little toddlers, they're very selfish. They're very self-centered because the instinct to survive makes you selfish. Because in order to survive, everything has to be about you, including events that are not about you. You have to make it about you in order to survive, which is, of course, irrational because, again, events happen to you. They're not about you. But like if you have an animal out in the field, let's say you have a deer, and you're walking out there and the deer looks up and hears you, it runs away. Why? Well, it runs away because of fight or flight response. But where does that come from? It comes from an instinct to survive. So to the deer, even though deer do not think like humans do, they don't have the capacity, but they do have a frontal lobe, and they in the front, it's a small one, but they do have a frontal lobe, being a mammal. And then, of course, they have the animal brain, and the animal brain dominates in the deer. So they have an instinct to survive, and when they see you, they just assume you're out to kill it. Now, maybe you're just out there picking trash up. Maybe you didn't even know the deer was there. You don't care about that deer. You're not going to mess with that deer. But when that deer sees you, it immediately assumes you're a predator. You're out to get it, right? That's what it starts to think. It has an instinct. It runs away. So the deer makes that event about itself. Even though it's irrational, in this case, it keeps the deer alive. It contributes to survival. So human beings' default position, just like a turtle, a bird, a deer, a dog, a cat, it's just irrational thinking. That's our default setting. So like, when you buy a cell phone, you have the default settings, and you may change the ringtone, change the background, and then of course you can factory reset it back to the defaults. Well, human beings' default is irrational thinking from an instinct to survive. The only difference is human beings have this hardware called the frontal lobe that's much larger than any, well, not every mammal, whales, elephants, dolphins, they actually have larger brains depending on what you're talking about. And we don't know exactly how they think. But what I'm saying is we have this hardware in front of the animal brain. The animal brain is like the software. And what happens is it influences the hardware known as the frontal lobe, where our human thinking comes from, the rationality, the problem solving, our personality. So the problem is what the animal brain does, and I will repeat this once we get to our thinking video or session, it influences the hardware, and we start to think irrationally. Then we start to feel something. It creates a feeling that influences our behavior. But here's the key point. Our thinking gives us the potential to behave or act or do something. And then what that leads to is either behavior that is rational or behavior that's irrational. Now, the difference between rational and irrational thinking and rational and irrational behavior is very simple. A rational thought is based on a fact. An irrational thought is based on an opinion. However, a rational behavior is something that makes sense in the context of the event. So whether it's a trigger, a problem, or a goal, if the action makes sense logically, if it helps you reach a goal, solve a problem, cope with the trigger, with coping skills, that would be a rational behavior. If it's an irrational behavior, that means it makes no sense logically in the context of the event. So for instance, if it's raining and I start to cuss and scream because it's raining, okay, well, that makes no sense. That's irrational. Maybe I thought something, I got angry, and then I started cussing because it's raining because it ruined my plans today. Maybe I had plans. Okay, well, it's not raining because of me. It's just happening to me. So cussing and screaming at the rain is completely stupid. It's irrational. But because it affected me, I make the event about me. I make the rain about me. Now all of a sudden I'm mad and I'm acting irrationally. Now you'll notice this arrow. The question is, does the action or behavior address or fix the event or problem? If the answer is yes, it's rational. If the answer is no, then it's irrational. Having said that, pretty much everything I said here, some basic concepts, everything I said just a minute ago on that slide is right here. And again, I would have just done bullet points, but people using this for educational reasons wouldn't be able to use it if I didn't put the information. So let's look at the top because this is really important. Anything that happens in the universe, in your environment, the things that happen to you, whether it's from another person, like a person saying, I hate you, or your kid acting up, or your boyfriend dumps you, or your girlfriend cheats on you, a fly lands on your nose. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything that happens is an event. Events happen over time. And one of the things we're going to talk about in another session is life equals time, and your time equals life. So in other words, if I spend 5 hours playing a video game, that's 5 hours of my life because I spent 5 hours of time doing it. So in other words, whatever I spend my time doing, I'm spending my life doing. And if I'm spending my life doing it, I'm spending my time doing it. This is going to come up, especially when we talk about anger management, drug use, relapse prevention. So for instance, like I'll just give you a quick, preview. Let's say I'm on probation. I went to jail for a year because I got caught with Percocets or whatever. I don't know, whatever. Let's say I go to jail, I get out. Okay, I'm on probation. Let's say a time comes, I'm really stressed, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm upset, I'm angry, I don't know how to deal with it, and I decide to get high. I decide to take a bunch of Percocets and get high. Now, let's say that I get, do the P test, probation officer catches me, I go back to jail for 6 months. So what I did was, let's say I get high and that high lasts for, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever, even an entire day, however long it lasts, doesn't matter. But it's not going to last very long. And so what I did was I'm kind of switching out my time in my life here. In other words, I spent part of my time in my life because now when I go to jail for 6 months, that 6 months of my time I can't get back. I can't get my life back. I just gave part of my life in order to partake of that action. Okay. Or if I get in a fight with somebody and I go to jail, I just literally gave that person part of my life because I spent my time on them. I spent not only my time fighting them and worrying about them, but I spent my time going to jail over them. Okay. But anyway, that'll come up. That's more specific topics. We'll talk about that later. So really, there's not a whole lot else to say. I just wanted to, this is the slide that sort of explains everything that I said a minute ago. Now, let's go to some examples. There's some examples I like to use in therapy in order to make this fun. So the first example is what I call the bird poop example. Okay. So let's say, and you can see how how sophisticated I am with my animation and my, my pictures here. But anyway, let's say Mr. E walks outside to check the mail. Okay. Let's say a bird poops in what little hair I have. I don't have much hair, but let's say bird poop just happens to land in the spot of hair I actually do have. Okay. So now here's the thing. That's the event. In this case, we might call it an anger trigger because it's something that would normally make someone mad. So this event, we'll just call it a trigger. Okay. So let's say a bird poops in my hair as I'm going to check the mail. Now, if Mr. E begins to think, stupid bird, I hate this stupid bird. I'm so unlucky. I can't believe this crap happened to me. Okay, so let's put that in quotes, okay? We'll say that's the thinking. So that's what I'm thinking to myself. So going back to the triangle, the event occurred, and then I started to think, stupid bird, I'm so unlucky. I hate these stupid birds out here. They're always pooping on my hair, whatever I'm saying to myself. So now, of course, a bird pooping on your hair is random. It's determined by probability, by chance. And in fact, I've never actually had this happen. I've never had a bird poop in my hair, but I know people who have. But the bottom line is there's variables that affect that. Wind speed, wind direction, where you're at versus where the bird's at. Birds probably don't consciously use the bathroom. It just happens. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it just happens. So just the bird ate at a certain time. It was full. The wind speed, the wind direction. I was walking in a certain direction, happened to be in the right place at the right time, whatever. Bird poop lands on my hair. There's a lot of complicated variables and math that goes with it, but there's a probability. It was random. I didn't know it was going to happen until it did. Okay. I didn't know. Now, it's also not about me. It's not like the bird woke up and said, now I know that Mr. E is going to check the mail about 10 o'clock this morning. I'm going to poop on his hair just to piss him off. I hate that Mr. E and I'm going to poop in his hair. That never happened. So a lot of times human beings, what we do is we put human traits into inanimate objects or animals. A good example of this would be like when my kids were little and they would run through the house and they would stub their toe on the coffee table and say, this stupid coffee table, that coffee table hit me. So what they're doing was they're taking human behavior and actions and attributes and putting it onto the coffee table. Now, the coffee table didn't do anything. In fact, it was my kid that hit the coffee table, not the other way around. But what I'm saying is the bird did not on purpose poop on me, okay? But if I think like this, I hate this stupid bird. Why did this happen to me? I'm unlucky. I'm taking that event and making it about me personally, like I'm the only one who it's ever happened to, like it was on purpose. No, it's random. It has nothing to do with me. It only happened to me. Okay, it's not about me. So then let's say Mr. E gets super pissed about it. That's my feelings. I'm pissed off about it. So let's say Mr. E takes a rock. He picks the rock up. He throws it. I miss the bird, of course, because it's a bird. And maybe I'm cussing at the bird, you stupid blankety blank. I throw the rock. The rock misses. Of course, throwing a rock is an action. It's a behavior. It's something I'm doing. Okay. So I throw the rock misses. Boom. It hits my neighbor's car door, breaks the window. Okay. Now, the red right here is the irrational. This is one path I take. Okay. So the irrational path is I think irrationally, the stupid bird, I hate this bird. Why does this happen to me? Whatever. It's an opinion. Okay. That the bird's stupid, that I'm unlucky, that life hates me. I mean, all these things are opinions. So what I've done now when I take the rock and throw it and break the window on accident is I have two problems now. I have bird poop on my bald head. And of course I have a broken window now that I'm going to have to pay for. Okay. So now I've got two problems. Whereas if you look at the green, this is the rational, factual path. Okay. So in other words, if I say to myself, there's bird poop in my hair, I need to wash my hair. Well, instead of being angry, I feel motivated. The feeling is motivation to wash my hair. Okay. So if you go back to the triangle we looked at, my modified triangle, because I think I need to wash bird poop out of my hair, now I have the potential to do that. Before that, I didn't have the potential to take that action because I wasn't thinking about it. So as soon as bird poop lands on my hair and I figure out what it is, I go, okay, I guess I better go inside and wash my hair. Now I start to feel motivated to wash my hair as quickly as possible because I don't want bird poop on my head. So I go in, I shower, I get the bird poop out. Well, guess what? I now fixed the actual problem. The actual problem being bird poop in my hair. The problem is not I'm unlucky. The bird's stupid. The bird did this to me. I hate life. Okay. None of this is the problem. The problem is bird poop was in my hair. That's it, period. Okay. So, of course, that's what it says at the bottom here. So rational thinking leads to rational behavior, which solves the actual problem. Okay. Me throwing a rock and cussing at a bird is not going to get bird poop off my bald head. It's just never going to do it. So hypothetically, if all I do is think about how stupid the bird is and how much I hate it, what never gets solved? Well, I just walk around forever with bird poop in my hair, hypothetically, if I never think to wash my hair. And then if I never do it, right? So this is, of course, the modified triangle showing this situation. So again, excuse me, when I think these things, it gives me the potential to throw a rock as I think about it. I'm going to throw a rock I hate that stupid bird, right? It gives me the potential to do it. Of course, it does not solve the problem. And notice, of course, the anger didn't actually do anything. It was the throwing of the rock. So there's two problems now, like I said, bird poop and the broken window. Now, again, if we go with the rational thing, right? So bird poops on my head. I think there's bird poop in my hair. I need to wash it. It gives me the potential to wash my hair. I wash my hair. That solves the problem. There's no more bird poop in my hair. The main thing to understand about this, though, is that between the irrational and the rational cognitive, because the last slide was the irrational example using the cognitive triangle. This is the rational example. Notice the difference with feelings, that the feeling will always be a sense of motivation to do whatever it is you're trying to do because you're thinking about doing what you need to do to solve the problem. So like if I'm overweight and I say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and work out today, as I think, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and work out today, I get motivated to go to the gym. If my water heater breaks and I would like to have some hot water and I think, okay, I need to call a plumber, cut my water off, get a new water heater, I start getting motivated to fix that water heater, right? Whereas if I say, man, I hate this stupid house, something's always breaking in it, I just hate life. Okay, then I start to get angry and depressed. That's the feeling that is created. Okay, so with rational thinking, you typically get a sense of motivation. That's the feeling you have. Now, you may have like a baseline irritability or be a little bit, like I said, irritated about something, a little bit sad about something. But the point I'm making is irrational thinking is the key to mental health and substance use because irrational thinking blows the emotion out of proportion. It causes the emotion to go from, let's say you have a scale of 0 to 10 and you have like just a little bit of irritability. You're at a 1. Somebody's irritating you a little bit. So you're a 1, right? Irrational thinking, as it continues over time, it blows that emotion into extreme anger, rage, whatever. And so it goes from a 1 or a 2 to a 9 or a 10. Okay. So that's what happens with irrational thinking. It inflates or blows up the feeling. Now, the second example, and this is the only other one we have because I'm trying to get the video done for you guys here. The second example is, let's say Mr. Eric goes to start his car, okay? And let's say the car won't start. Let's just pretend the battery went out or whatever. Now I go to crank the car, it won't start. So that's the event, and we'll call it a trigger, okay? Because trust me, when Mr. Eric was in his 20s, I got really pissed off about this, okay? And trust me, I did some of this stuff. Some of these examples, not the bird poop example, but this one, for instance, in a modified sense, is something that I've done before when I was in my early 20s. But anyway, so the car won't start. We'll call that the event. Okay, so I crank the engine, it doesn't work. So then I start to think, of course, there would actually be a lot of cuss words if it was Mr. E doing it. But basically, I hate this piece of crap car. This car's a piece of junk. I can't believe this is happening to me. I'm late. I got to get to work. I don't know why this is happening to me, right? So let's say I think all that, and I put it in quotes here, right? That's the thinking. It's very irrational because what I'm doing is I'm taking the event of the battery being dead and I'm making it about me. Now it's happening to me, but it's not about me. In other words, it's not like the car here, like off the movie Cars was like, oh, I hate that Mr. E, and I'm not going to start today. I'm just going to make sure my battery doesn't start today to make him late for work. No, that would be putting a human trait onto an inanimate object. Okay, obviously the car did not, in any way did it do that. It was a completely random event. It was just determined by probability. So in other words, eventually, if you have a battery in your car, it's going to go out. Depending on the weather, if it gets too cold outside, depending on the cold cranking amps of the battery, depending on, did the battery terminals become a little bit loose as you drove the car? Does it have some rust on it? Maybe the current's not flowing. Maybe it's actually your alternator. Maybe if you've started it 5 million times, obviously as you start it, eventually it's going to drain the battery. It's going to mess your starter up. I mean, anytime you use objects, machines, they wear down and break down just like your body does. If I go out here and run for 20 years, I'm going to have problems with my knees when I'm older. It's just common sense. So the event of the battery going out, let's pretend that's the problem. It's random. It's just determined by a probability. Okay. So anyway, so I start thinking this, I get really super pissed again, which trust me, in the past I certainly was. So that's my feeling. And then let's say I just, I slam the car door, I'm cussing, this piece of blankety blank. I kick the car door and put a dent in it. I go in, I pick up a lamp and I throw the lamp. I can't believe this crap's happened to me, right? So all of that is my actions. That's what I'm doing. Now, in order to do those things, I have to think about doing them. So at some point, there has to be a thought in my head of a lamp, even if it's not a complete sentence, a flash of a lamp and me picking it up and throwing it. There has to be something going on there. Otherwise, none of this stuff would happen. So the irrational path is highlighted in red. Again, I think all this stuff, I break the lamp, whatever. I have 3 problems now. The car won't start because the battery's dead. There's a dent in my car door, which if you've ever had a dent in a car door, that's going to be like $500 to fix that thing unless you know how to do it yourself. And then a broken lamp. Okay, so on top of the $100 battery, now you've got $500 or $600 dent. Now you got a broken lamp. And all of the cussing in the world, all of the throwing lamps, dents in the door, none of this is going to make your battery start. You're just wasting your time with these actions. And again, your time is your life and your life is your time. So if I spend an hour being pissed off and doing all this stuff, I just wasted an hour of my life not going to work because that's presumably where I was going. I just wasted an hour of my life doing nothing when I could have used that hour to call a friend, get to AutoZone, get a battery, get that thing in, call my boss, tell him, hey, boss, I'm going to be late, but I'll be in a few minutes. By the time an hour's over, I could already had that battery in on my way to work, but instead I'm sitting here throwing lamps and cussing. Okay. The green path is the factual, rational path. So car won't start. That's the event, random event. I say, okay, my car won't start. Need to figure it out. Well, looks like it's the battery. Okay, I guess I'll call my friend. I'll call a tow truck. I'll call a repair shop. Whatever it is. It depends on what it is. I mean, if it's a battery, obviously you're not going to take these actions. But if it was like an alternator, you need to call a tow truck. Whatever the case is. So then I start to feel, Mr. E feels motivated to check what's wrong and to make the phone calls he needs to make. So in other words, when I think I need to call Bob's Auto Shop, I need to call Little Jimmy's tow truck place. When I think that, it gives me the potential to now look up the number on my cell phone, to actually dial the number. Those are actions, but I have to think about it first. And of course, then those actions will solve the problem, because eventually my car gets fixed and then it starts. And then, of course, if I called my boss and I did what I had to do, I can fix that problem, right? So in this case, you just have one problem. Just like with the bird poop example, when you do the rational thinking process, you only have one problem, which is, by the way, forever and always, the problem will always be the event, whatever happened. So the problem will not be your thinking, which is, again, with mental health, substance abuse. This is where the problem comes in. As human beings, our default setting is irrational thinking, and we assume that the irrational opinion is the problem. Our opinion of the person that we're dealing with, the opinion of the situation, in this case, our opinion of a car, we assume that's the problem. No, the problem is whatever the event is. Bird poops in my hair. That's the problem, not my opinion of what happened, that it's BS, not my opinion of the bird, not my opinion of my life. The problem is the bird poop. In the car example, the problem is the battery or whatever it is, okay? So again, I don't have to go all the way through this again, but this is the irrational cognitive, modified Mr. E's cognitive triangle example, where you think something irrational, you get mad, and then the behavior, you can see that. And of course, it doesn't solve the problem. So what you end up having is you have three problems. The car won't start, a dent in the door, and a broken lamp. This is the rational example. Again, you'll notice under feelings, it says motivation, because now you're motivated to make the calls and fix your car. Your behavior is actions that help contribute to fixing the problem, which again, the actual problem will always be the event, not your thinking. The opinion is not the problem, but most people focus on their opinion as the problem, whereas it's really just whatever happened. Okay. Now, some final thoughts. Some of this I've already said, so I don't have to say all of it. But what we're trying to do with our behavior, and of course, I'll explain this when we have there will actually be a video as far as I'm concerned. That's what I plan to do. There will be a video on events, just like there will be an entire video on rational and irrational thinking. There will be an entire video on behavior. Okay. Excuse me. So there will be videos breaking all of this down. This is just the foundational video, and everything will branch out from that. But I want you to take a look at the statement that's highlighted in blue, and this is incredibly important. Irrational opinion-based thinking creates more problems. In other words, I want you to think about rabbits. If anybody on here watching this has ever owned rabbits, and there's a reason why people say such and such breeds like rabbits, because rabbits can breed rather quickly. I mean, they'll have babies, and within 2 months, the baby's pregnant. I mean, it's ridiculous. You'll start out with 2 rabbits, and then you have 20 of them. The point is, problems are like that. Problems, they breed more problems if you're irrational about it. If you think irrationally and act irrationally, one problem can become 10 problems very quickly. Whereas if you're rational, one problem gets solved and you're negative a problem, negative one problem. So if we're doing math here, we have one problem, you think rationally and you solve it, you have 0 problems. But if you think irrationally, you had one problem and now you have 4 problems, now you have 5 problems, right? It's like kindergarten math. So it's very important to think rationally so that you behave rationally. Right here, number 6, rational thinking basically saves time, which again is saving your life, because you're not spending as much time on useless actions that do nothing. You're solving problems, and I mean, of course, you can't guarantee that you'll solve a problem, but what your actions do, your actions increase or decrease the odds or probability of a future event occurring. So again, if my water heater breaks, whatever actions I take are either going to increase the odds of fixing it and getting a new water heater, or they're going to decrease the odds of fixing it and getting a new water heater. Of course, I can't guarantee that my actions will do anything. I may die before the new water heater ever comes here. I may make the call, cool, we're going to get it fixed, and then I croak that night, I have a stroke and die. Okay, well, then it wasn't me fixing the problem. It didn't get fixed, I guess. I don't know. But the point I'm making is your behavior increases or decreases the odds of something occurring. Now, having said that, this is the end of our first session, Thinking, Feelings, and Behavior. Again, it's a fundamental, foundational topic. If you have any comments, any feedback about either the format of the video, the topic of the video, or just if I did anything wrong, or if any of my group homeboys just want to say, hey, Mr. Eric, you're bald and ugly, whatever you want to do, email me at therapywithmre@yahoo.com, or comment on the video, or you can comment on the Facebook page. The Facebook page is also called Therapy with Mr. E. And the whole point is just to make it the videos more available, make, of course, the PowerPoints available so you guys can use it. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, because that's how we help grow it. Plus, if you're a subscriber, you get all these updates. Of course, if you like the Facebook page, you'll also, anytime I put something on there, it'll update you. So if you subscribe and hit the like button on Facebook, you'll kind of get, you'll get the updates. And I figure if you're a subscriber to the channel, like the two ladies, I'm assuming they're subscribers to the channel, that I addressed in the beginning when I talked about those two issues, I will prioritize my subscribers when it comes to not only individual videos I do on their topics, on their suggestions, but just mentioning it. So, if you're just a random person, I'm not saying I won't ever mention you. I'm just saying there's limited time on the videos. This one's already probably ran over time, but you get the point I'm making. I want to sort of really prioritize those individuals. If there's anything that you want me to discuss next, please let me know. And finally, the statement in blue. If you are a parent and your child has behavioral or anger management issues, maybe some past trauma, and that's what's causing the behaviors, and if you decide, I need some therapy for my child, whether it's outpatient therapy once a week or whether it's like intensive in-home therapy, which is what I do for a living, please let me know. It does not have to be with my company. We can set you up with, there's like 3 or 4 companies in my area in Putnam County, Tennessee. There's multiple companies that do in-home therapy. It doesn't have to be my company. I'm not even going to talk about what company I work for. But if you guys say, well, I really need this help, I need, it doesn't even have to be me. It doesn't have to be my company, but I don't care to do a little bit of resource linkage for you guys if you need help, unless it just eventually becomes unwieldy. But you get my point. If you guys need resources for services, please let me know. Okay. And I believe that's the end of that. So anyway, guys, I thank you very much. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Again, comment. Let me know what you want to see changed, or what you want me to do, or any topics that you want me to touch on. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good day, guys.